Hello, Granger. Tristan Hopkins here, and I am here to talk about the current and most controversial political issue that is occurring right now in Romania. Um, this has actually been an event that I have actually never seen before. I've seen it in, kind of history books, I guess. But the fact that it's also happening in 2021 kind of, surprises me in a way. It's pretty unique to, someone of my age, I guess, to hear it happening in another country. Um, so a little background to the situation. Romania is a multi-party system that has seven political parties in that system. It Between those seven, two of them are left wing, while five of them are right wing. Um, they they are also used to actually form together. One party actually can't just have all of the major power. They actually form together to create a coalition government, which they is just where the political parties cooperate to form a government unitedly and equally in a way. So within these seven parties, two of them have a huge you know liking and gravitation towards their popularity, that is. So we have the Social Democratic Party, which was actually formed in 2001. They are center left. And then we got the National Liberal Party, which was actually formed in 1990 after the fall of communism, especially in Romania, after they were being controlled under a communist regime. They both of those kind of formed, even though the Social Democratic Party was formed about 10 years later. They still, both of them kind of formed because of the communist control over them. They wanted to be their own country, in which the National Liberal Party is center right. Now, out of the other political parties, the only one to kind of point out in this situation would be the Save Romania Union, which was actually a more recent political party that was formed. It was formed in 2016. This political party is anti-corruption. It is liberal, it's progressive, it's pro-Euroscepticism, and it is center to center right within its political status. Now, the main issue here is that the former Prime Minister, Florin Situ, if I'm pronouncing that right, he was ousted in a no confidence vote, which a no confidence vote is basically when in Romania, if a particular group, or maybe I am actually not totally sure on this one, maybe even the citizens are having too much disagreements with the way the prime minister is ruling over them or representing them, they can suggest a no confidence vote, to which if they get enough votes, the opposing team towards the prime minister will then be ousted. And therefore, the president will have to choose a new prime minister within a certain amount of time. So in this case, that is exactly what happened. Former Prime Minister Florin Situ was ousted in a no confidence vote on October 5th, 2021, from a collapse of the country's coalition. So we can see here that the unity of these governments started to fall apart. We had factors of COVID, which was basically one of the biggest factors in this no confidence vote, because Romania is actually the second highest COVID case I guess you can call it, in Europe. So that's not pretty good. They have the second highest rate, of deaths per day, and so the USR plus group, which the USR plus was actually they aligned together to form a group. They resigned from the bloc and went against C2 and his ideas. So his idea was to put 10 billion euros into infrastructure, but the USR party, the USR plus party, which, as I mentioned earlier, is anti-corruption, meaning money does not play into politics. They saw it kind of as a fake gesture. So, as I quote here, siphoning of public funds and attempt to win support of local mayors. So they kind of just saw the, kind of the fakeness of what he was maybe at least trying to get towards in their own beliefs. At least that's what they thought. And well, they put into act to it and went against him. The USR group actually only has 80 members in it. And within this, you will need 234 votes to get C2 ousted. Miraculously for the USR group, they completely blew Florin C2 out of the wind at 281 votes to 234 votes. So they clearly got him out of there. C2 then resigns and a new prime minister needs to be found. Then we get this guy named Dacian Chiolos, if I'm pronouncing that right as well. Though Chiolos's attempt to form a new government, when he becomes the new prime minister, who was actually picked from the president of Romania, whose name is Klaus Iohannis, if I'm also pronouncing that right. So he had the job to pick a new prime minister. He then picks Dacian Chiolos, who made a suggestion for a new government, although towards the Romanian government, they have totally as well went against his suggestion, leaving him basically not, he doesn't have the prime minister job anymore. And as of right now, Romania is under a provisional government with former prime minister Florin C2 as the prime minister, although his powers are heavily restricted. He is not able to make executive decrees, and he is only allowed to lead this for 45 days. So if the president, Iohannis, does not pick a new prime minister within that time period, either they will result back to C2 and kind of just call it good, or they will pick a new prime minister with most likely within the USR group as well, just not Dacian Chiolos. Or if all else fails, they will be final resorted to a snap election, which basically is the election date. They have a date for the election. Snap election just does it prior to that, just because that's the fastest they can do. So even though it's not on the same date as where it usually is, they are kind of forced to do it. To which this is very important because snap elections has not occurred since the fall of communism. So if this snap election does happen, it's been about 30 years since the fall of communism over in Romania, and that'll be history. All right, bringing it to the reactions to these news sources. For my first news source, I have got this news source called Politica. Its title is Romanian MPs reject Dacian Chiolos as prime minister. It was written by Matej Roska on October 20th, 2021. And from here, it wasn't, they didn't necessarily, kind of give a reaction. Politica itself kind of stands as a fair, no bias. They want to bring out their information equally, and as truthful and right as they can. Even in their about themselves, they say that they dedicate themselves to provide accurate, nonpartisan, impactful info to the right person at the right time. So it's not just one side. In this article, they kind of just, like I said, explain the situation. There is no kind of reaction or call to action, and whatever their opinion may be for the right call to action. Although what is unique about Politica is the fact that they are based in Arlington County, Virginia. So I thought I was maybe not going to find a news source who, was, out of Romania, especially within this type of situation. I know maybe the EU, maybe one country or a couple countries in the EU may have written about it, but the fact that I found something in Arlington County, Virginia, was kind of surprising to me. Maybe that was most likely the factor that of why they didn't necessarily give their own opinion, because what do we have to kind of say about it, and if we're not, I guess, living there. Maybe if it was something within the US and they were on, whatever blue or red side, they would be, totally just jabbing on the other side potentially. But the fact that, we're a whole continent away, maybe played in the role of just describing the situation. And they do focus on international and local nations. So the fact that they do go internationally kind of shows their credibility here. And again, my evidence here for the fact that their reaction was kind of, in general, was kind of towards the fact that first of all, if you do read the article, you can kind of tell there's not much of a side, and the other fact, or the other type of evidence, would be that they kind of put out that they dedicate themselves to, accurate, nonpartisan, impactful info. So, you can kind of tell they're trying to be fair here and not really trying to, it's not just their opinion. They're just laying out what's happening, and, that's their news article. To add on more, and I believe I've been saying this news site as Politica when I'm pretty sure it's Politico, my bad. Which more on the USR Plus, like PLUS, that group was actually just recently formed in 2019. And what's important here is the fact that Dacian Ciolos is the founder of this merging group. And the comparison between Politico and USR Plus is that Politico is more of a kind of left news source, while Dacian Ciolos and the USR Plus is kind of just center. They are progressive, they're liberal, and they're economic liberal and anti-corruption. But overall, they're, center. Moving on to the next source, we have Romania Insider. And this source was article is named Romania photos of the day. Parliament votes against government proposed by PM designate Chilos. It was written by Irina Maurica on October 20th, 2021. And again, here it still is kind of general. I mean, they don't really have much to say about an opinion. Again, they kind of just, say what the situation is. They told what happened to the past prime minister, what's happening now with Dacian Cholos, and that's kind of just it about what they said. But what's unique that I find here is the fact that Romania Insider is based in Bucharest, Bucuresti, Romania. And the fact that they didn't have much to say, even though they are based in Romania and the effects are, happening straight and, right in front of them. I'd think they'd have a little bit more to say, but I guess not. It's kind of just a general reaction. I'm kind of finding it difficult to show my evidence, because the evidence of just not having a reaction is just to I guess read the article. I mean, you can clearly see they're not trying to go against Dacian Cholos, and they're also not trying to go for Dacian Cholos. They're just saying the situation. So I guess that would be my evidence. Well, moving on to my third source, I mean, just finding out, I guess where they're based was a little confusing, but first of all, it is called Balkan Insight. The title of the article was titled Romanian President Nominates Dacian Cholos to Form New Government, and it was written by Madeline Nexutu on October 12th, 2021. So as we can see here, first of all, it was written just 8 days actually before the two other sources I had found. At this point, things have been progressing in the whole entire situation, but in this standpoint, they are kind of more, they haven't gotten the full, they're kind of just seeing potentially what could happen, while as in the other two articles, they kind of already have found out what happened and they're kind of just saying it. The significance here is that, first of all, Balkan Insight is based in Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, North Macedonia, Romania, and Serbia. That's kind of confusing because I'm not sure if, they're all kind of different spots. Although I do know that Bosnia and Herzegovina are kind of southwest of Romania, same as well as Serbia. So this is also another news source that's actually out of Romania. And where I got was the kind of unique part in this news source was they kind of do seem to have a bit of a reaction, although they're just putting more people's, other credible people's quotes on them. So for example, it just seems like in this article, they have really not much hope for Cholos. They gave a full quote by this person named Dan Tapalega, who is editor-in-chief of the G4 Media news website. And he was basically explaining how Iohannis, the president, will choose C2 again or someone else in the USR. So, well, that being my evidence kind of towards their reaction, although it also wasn't necessarily a reaction, it was more of just bringing in another, kind of person who, I guess has things to say about Dacian Chiolos and what's going to happen. Where I kind of got their viewpoint was the fact that the person who they brought in was stating Chiolos, won't be prime minister. He claims that, they'll either angle at getting a National Liberal Party leader as prime minister, or they'll just return to Florence C2 as, just to have somebody in power, As for Balkan Insight as a news source, they claim to promote free speech, human rights, and democratic values in South and Eastern Europe. So it seemed as if, again, they're kind of all equally rounded, or at least trying to be equally rounded, give the right information, try not to be biased, have, these equality and towards people. I'm sure they're for the Hungarian party that's actually part of one of the political parties in Romania, the Democratic Alliance of Hungarians in Romania, who basically just fight for Hungarian minority interest. And I'm sure they're also pro, or not pro, just their regionalism. They try not to divide between that. So as for maybe why they were going towards this route of kind of forming a not much of a disagreement with what's happening with Dacian Cholos, but maybe that's why they kind of sided with the USR Plus group, who is also going against Dacian Cholos and kind of stating their opinion that he won't be prime minister. As for my last source, we got this one article by Euronews. This article was named "Romania Faces Political Deadlock After Prime Minister Ousted in No Confidence Vote." It was last updated, at least, on October 6th, 2021, and it was written by Orlando Crowcroft. So what is kind of unique here was the fact that this article actually shows a quick 1-minute video of the situation, and it looks to be as if the news source is Euronews now. And throughout the video is just a man kind of speaking about the situation, but what also strikes me here about this article was the fact that this article was actually the first to kind of talk about how the citizens are reacting. So in the article, it says that it's mounting public anger against the country's political class. And calling back to when I mentioned the kind of one of the bigger components to why all this is kind of happening, to why the last prime minister, Florence C2, kind of got ousted, was because of COVID-19 and the disappointment that these citizens are feeling towards his actions and what he's kind of taking it to. We see here that there was actually a new lockdown restriction on October 2nd, which actually led to street protests for calls for the fall of the government. So, for one, but this kind of shows the difficulty with how how this situation is going forward, because within the article as well, we see that they are kind of stating that both the PNL party, which is the National Liberal Party, as well as the Social Democratic Party, the PSD, and even the USR Party, the Save Romania Union, they all do not want to do a snap election, because that might just cause a hastily thrown together government, and the fact that this is Romania's fourth COVID massive breakout that could just completely destroy the government even worse. And the fact that COVID-19 is obviously not just a situation that can be one solution. It's difficult. I mean, we've been seeing it for over a year and a half, and it would just not be good if snap elections were to occur. Now we see here that this article actually gives us a kind of opinion by this one person named Radu Magdan, who is a political analyst, to which he suggests that the scenario that may come with this whole situation could be a right-wing coalition under an alternate leader from the National Liberal Party, with key positions given to the USR. Or it could be a National Liberal Party / social kind of a social democratic party with a social democratic prime minister. Now, the significance to why they chose that person to give the suggestion out of everybody on their article could be that it could be because he's not for Dacian Cholos. Dacian Cholos is kind of more center left, while this person Radu Magdan is giving a scenario where it will basically be given under a right wing government and coalition. So possibly what Euronews is maybe getting towards is that although it's again not necessarily a reaction, it is still bringing a person with their own political views, giving a quote that they have said about the situation and making it towards whatever they're against or for. And so far as with the two people who have been presented in these news sources, were kind of against Dacian Cholo. So I'm not seeing that much hope with him. So yeah, that's I guess the kind of everything that I've researched. As I said, what could possibly happen in Romania is either A, Florin C2 comes back as prime minister because they failed to choose a second person. B, they could choose another prime minister, of course. Or C, they could, if both of those two fail, they will be resulted into a snap election, which, as I also stated before, that is not necessarily what people want. As someone actually did state in one of the articles I have found, was that this one person, I guess I didn't catch her first name, but Chiobanu, basically said the likelihood of a snap election to happen is very low, which, for the most part, I guess is pretty good. So, they'd rather want a strong government. Yeah, basically throughout the research I was doing, these these news sources did not give much of a reaction towards the situation. Um, Personally, overall, this assignment, I actually kind of found it a bit difficult to kind of execute and do my research on, especially the fact that, I kind of picked a smaller country, or at least maybe not smaller country, just, um, I mean, it is small, I guess, but, it's not as well internationally recognized. There we go. That's where I'm trying to get at. So the fact that this event could be happening crazy in Romania, although when it comes to a whole bunch of surrounding countries, um, I did not get much information there. To which I actually forgot to mention, my last source 4, was actually from Lyon, France. So it seems to me here that the two places that actually kind of had a reaction were not necessarily in Romania, or, at least on the, because we got one in Lyon, France, and that was with, Euronews, and then the other one that kind of gave a reaction was Balkan Insight, to which they're located in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia, and, kind of those areas. To whereas the ones that were, we got one that was in Bucharest, Romania, which is kind of central, but, kind of southwest Romania. They didn't really give much a reaction, as to where the article that was from Arlington County, Virginia, I know that may just be the reason why they didn't give a reactions, because, we're in the United States. It's, I feel as if France and Bosnia and Herzegovina have a more of a reason to why they're giving more of a reaction than, Virginia. And, they're kind of just stating it for people here that don't really know what's going on, to whereas, people over there may know what's going on, and, they'll, need to give a reaction to that. um but yeah, overall, this assignment, again, it was kind of difficult, and it was difficult to execute. um the sources just, they did not give a clear reaction to the situation. I am i am proud to have done as much research as I did. The fact that I have got a whole situation down, and from why it happened, why it occurred, what's going on in the middle of it, and then what could the aftermath effects be. um but the fact that none of these news sources really gave me a clear reaction was pretty difficult on my end. um I was felt as if maybe I was just kind of trying to stretch, the fact that, I need to find kind of a reason to why these may not give a reaction, or maybe why they give a reaction, and just the reasons may just be just, look at the article. um there's no totally fighting for Dacian, against Dacian Cholos. It was mostly primarily just, here's the situation, here's why he got ousted, here's why he failed to have the prime ministers accept his new government, and then here's what could happen. Then the article's done. So yeah, I guess this was my research on political issues in Romania. um I am looking forward to actually keeping up with this issue, and just to kind of see, what's going to happen. Did they do the snap election, or do they find somebody else to run their government? And I guess that'll be something to look forward in the future. So thank you for letting me get this opportunity to research other international news that is happening in other places that's not just the United States of America. So thank you.